My sister raised her glass and said, clear as daylight, "Where's your husband and kids?" "Oh, right, you don't have any." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it cut deep, my parents smiling like it was harmless fun, my fork frozen midair. I'd spent years paying their bills, saving their home, and now I was the punchline at their table. I set my spoon down, looked my sister dead in the eye, and said, "Where's your money?" "Oh, right, I've been supporting you." Until today. The room fell silent, but that silence didn't end the night it started everything that came after. What they did next crossed a line no family ever should. Before I tell you what that silence led to, tell me, where are you listening from? So I know I'm not the only one who's ever been laughed at by their own family. And when you've heard the rest of my story, tell me, what would you have done if you were sitting at that table? I'm Grace Whitaker, 32, a UX researcher living in Seattle's Capitol Hill. From the outside, my life looks steady, clean apartment, stable job, quiet mornings. But what most people don't see is where half my paycheck goes. It disappears into the same black hole it's gone into for years, my family. My mother, Linda, was a nurse until her heart surgery forced her into early retirement. My father, Thomas, used to teach economics before moving into consulting, which usually means waiting for calls that never come. And then there's my sister, Brooke, 4 years younger. Bright, charming, endlessly adored. She calls herself a fashion influencer, though what she really influences is my bank balance. Rent, credit cards, car repairs, her texts always start the same way. "Hey sis, can you help me just this once?" I used to tell myself that's what good daughters do. They keep the lights on the house from foreclosure, the family from falling apart. I thought that if I just kept giving one day, they'd see me as more than their backup plan. Every Sunday, I drive an hour south to Tacoma for family dinner. My mother insists it's tradition: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something sweet at the end. The house still smells the same, like coffee and old wood polish. The photos on the wall are the same too: Brooke, in a white dress at her high school pageant, Dad shaking hands with someone important, Mom smiling in a hospital uniform. There isn't one photo of me alone. I'm always standing at the edge, half cropped out, the reliable one who showed up late because she had to finish work first. I don't complain. I bring wine, I help clean up. I ask about their week. They talk about Brooke's latest partnership, about Dad's potential client, about Mom's pills being too expensive. When the meal ends, Dad pats my shoulder like a colleague, not a daughter, and says, "Thanks for keeping things steady." Some nights on the drive back to Seattle, I tell myself this is just how families are: messy, imperfect, needy. Other nights I grip the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ache, because deep down I know it's not love that keeps me paying their bills. It's guilt, the kind they raised me on. That's why I didn't see the dinner last Sunday coming. I thought it would be like every other one small talk tension hidden under polite smiles. But that night, the air felt different, thick with something sharp and waiting. The kind of tension that makes even the silverware sound loud. That Sunday, the table looked the same as always. Chicken steaming in the center, a basket of rolls, wine glasses catching the amber light. But the warmth felt wrong, stretched too thin. My mother talked about Brooke's latest fashion event, how she'd been invited to a designer party in downtown Seattle. My father added something about great exposure and how proud we should be. I smiled, said all the right words, but my chest felt tight. Exposure didn't pay rent. Pride didn't erase the thousands I'd wired to keep her credit score alive. Brooke leaned back in her chair, phone in hand, scrolling as she half listened. Her laughter, sharp, dismissive, broke through my silence. "You know, Grace, you should come to one of those events. Maybe you'd finally meet someone." She looked up with that grin that never reached her eyes. "Where's your husband and kids, anyway?" "Oh, right, you don't have any." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Mom laughed. Soft, high-pitched, the kind she used when she wanted to smooth things over, but this time it carried something else. "Agreement," Dad chuckled too, shaking his head. "Don't tease your sister," he said lightly, but there was a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. I felt the world narrow. The smell of roasted garlic, the ticking wall clock, the clink of silverware, they all blurred into a hum. I'd worked every holiday, skipped vacations, paid their debts. And this was what they saw when they looked at me, someone incomplete. a woman defined by what she didn't have. Brooke swirled her wine eyes, glinting. I mean, you're doing fine, right? That tech job of yours, what is it you do again? Screens and surveys? Her tone was sugary, cruel. I just think you'd be happier if you had a life outside spreadsheets. My hand tightened around the spoon. I could feel the heat rising from my neck to my ears. For years, I'd let it slide, the jokes, the digs, the quiet expectations. But something broke, then something small but irreversible. I set my spoon down and looked straight at her. My voice came out calm, almost too calm. "Where's your money, Brooke?" I asked. "Oh, right, I've been supporting you." "Until today." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. The laughter stopped. My mother's hand froze halfway to her mouth. My father's eyes darted between us, unsure whether to scold or stay silent. Brooke blinked, stunned. "Excuse me, you heard me," I said quietly. "I'm done." For the first time in years, no one interrupted me. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. That silence, it wasn't peace. It was the sound of something ending. When I drove back to Seattle that night, the silence in my car felt heavier than their stares. The road stretched ahead like a tunnel of headlights and rain. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar calm on the surface, but underneath something sharp had finally woken up. I didn't cry. I didn't replay their words. I just thought about everything I'd done, every transfer, every bill, every sacrifice that had built their comfort while shrinking mine. By the time I reached Capitol Hill, I knew I couldn't go back. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and went straight to my desk. The stack of envelopes was still there, bills, payment notices, receipts I'd never had the courage to total. I turned on my laptop and opened my bank account. Line after line, year after year, it stared back at me. Money to cover Brooke's tuition, Dad's mortgage, Mom's medication, the broken car, the new sofa, over $80,000 in 7 years. My chest tightened. I'd spent the best years of my life keeping everyone else afloat. The irony was brutal. I worked in fintech building tools to help people manage their money, while I couldn't manage to keep my own from bleeding away. That night, I hovered over the recurring transfer button I'd set up for my parents. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel this transfer?" I clicked, yes. It was just one click, but it felt like cutting a cord that had strangled me for years. I sat back exhaling for what felt like the first time in forever. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before I'd even finished my coffee. Mom first. "Sweetheart, did something happen? The mortgage payment didn't go through." Then Dad. "You forgot the house transfer." Then Brooke. "Hey, can you Venmo me rent's due?" I read every message, every guilt-laced word, and put the phone face down. By evening, there were voicemails, Mom's voice trembling, Dad's angry, Brooke's half-accusing, half-begging. By the end of the week, the calls turned desperate. "You can't do this to your family. You owe us after all we've done. You're being dramatic." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I started saving everything, the messages, the bank logs, the receipts, not out of spite, but because something inside me whispered that this wasn't over. Then came the text that confirmed it. "Come home Sunday. We need to talk." No greeting, no question, just an order. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My pulse slowed. If this was the war they wanted, I'd stop pretending I didn't know how to fight. "Fine," I whispered to myself. "Let's talk." Sunday came gray and cold. The drive down to Tacoma felt different this time. No guilt, no need to rehearse polite answers. Just a steady, deliberate calm. I parked in front of the house I'd spent years saving from foreclosure. The paint was peeling, the porch light still flickered, and the same curtains hung in the windows. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. When I stepped inside, the air felt heavy with tension and coffee. My mother was setting the table, her movements brisk, avoiding my eyes. My father sat at the head of the table like a judge, hands clasped. Brooke leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone, pretending not to care. "Grace," my mother said without looking up, "we can't live like this. The mortgage, the bills, you know how hard it is for us." I hung my coat over the chair. "I know. I've known for 7 years. Dad's tone was sharp. "Don't start. This family depends on you, and you've always helped. Why stop now?" I met his eyes. "Because it's not help if it's expected. That's called obligation." Mom dropped the napkin she was folding. "You're being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being honest." Brooke snorted, still looking at her phone. "Wow, someone's found their backbone. Congratulations, sis." I turned toward her. "You know what's funny? You mock me for not having a husband or kids, but you've lived off me like I'm your second parent." Her head jerked up. "Excuse me." Mom jumped in, flustered. "Enough, both of you. Brooke's still finding her footing. You can't expect her to be as responsible as you." My laugh came out dry. "That's exactly the problem. You never expected her to be." Dad slammed his hand on the table, the sound sharp as glass. "Watch your tone. We're your parents. Show some respect." I met his glare steady and calm. Respect is earned, not demanded. He rose slightly as if to intimidate me, but I didn't move. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself could shatter. Then Brooke spoke again, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you're so much better because you make a little money. Please. Without us, you'd have no one." I took a breath. "That's the difference, Brooke. You need people to define you." "I don't." Her face twisted. "You're pathetic. You'll die alone with your spreadsheets." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but at least I'll die debt-free." Mom gasped. Dad muttered something under his breath and Brooke stormed toward me. "You selfish." Before she could finish, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. The sound of paper hitting the table snapped her words in half. "What's that?" Dad demanded. "Records," I said. "Every payment I've made for this family since I started working, over $84,000. Tuition, mortgage, credit cards, repairs, even the new couch you're sitting on." Brooke rolled her eyes. "You're keeping score now." "No," I said evenly. "I'm keeping proof." Mom's voice shook. "Grace, that's not necessary." "It is," I cut in. "Because what happened after that dinner last week wasn't just a misunderstanding." Dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" I slid another sheet toward him, a printed notice with his signature. "This. The home equity loan you took out using my name." He stared, color draining from his face. "That's ridiculous." "Really?" "The bank disagrees." I pulled out another page stamped with an official seal. "Forgery, identity theft, elder fraud, depending on how far I decide to go." Brooke froze, her eyes darting between us. "You called the bank." "I didn't just call," I said. "I hired a lawyer, Rachel Tran. She's handling the case." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "You brought in an outsider to turn against your own family." I looked at her steady. "You stopped being my family when you used me like a wallet. You crossed a line when you signed my name." Dad leaned forward, voice low. "You think you can threaten us?" I didn't flinch. "Not a threat, a timeline. You have 30 days to remove my name from every account and repay what you owe. If you don't, Rachel will file." The room went dead silent. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than ever. Brooke whispered, "You wouldn't. Try me." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom's tears began soft practiced. "Sweetheart, we only did it to protect the house. You know your father's been struggling. We thought—" "That I'd clean it up again," I said. "You didn't think. You counted on it." Dad's face hardened. "We're your parents, and I was your insurance policy," I replied. "Not anymore." Brooke sank into her chair, eyes glassy. "You're ruining us." I gathered the folder back into my arms. "No, Brooke. I'm saving myself." As I turned toward the door, Mom's voice cracked behind me. "Grace, please, we can fix this together." I paused at the doorway. "I spent years fixing things you broke. This time, you'll fix it yourselves." Outside, the sky had turned the color of steel. I walked down the steps slowly, the cold air biting at my cheeks. Through the window, I could still see them, Mom crying, Dad pacing Brooke, staring blankly. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. "The investigation's complete," she said. "The bank confirmed the forgery. Your name's cleared. You're no longer liable for any of their debt." For a second, I couldn't speak. Years of pressure dissolved in one breath. "So, it's really over." Rachel's voice softened. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you." When I hung up, I stood by my apartment window watching the city lights shimmer on the water. I thought about everything I'd lost trying to earn their love and how letting go might be the only way to find peace. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving, for no reason poured a glass, and raised it to the skyline. To endings, to beginnings, to silence that finally meant peace. The news came quietly through a property listing online. The Tacoma house, the one I'd once saved from foreclosure, was up for sale. There it was on the screen, the peeling porch, the coffee-stained walls, a photo of the dining room where everything had fallen apart. A red tag at the bottom read, "For sale." I didn't feel triumph, only inevitability. When you build a life on someone else's sacrifices, it always collapses eventually. A week later, Mom sent a message. "One last dinner before we leave the house. Please come." I hesitated, then went. Not out of guilt, out of closure. When I arrived, the rooms were stripped bare, boxes stacked high, the smell of dust replacing Sunday roast. My father looked older, his voice quieter. Brooke sat silently, phone face down for once. We ate without small talk, without pretending. Afterward, I finally spoke. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I said, "but I won't be your safety net anymore. If you fall, you get back up on your own." No one argued. For the first time, silence didn't feel like war. It felt like understanding. When I left, I paused at the doorway and looked back. The house that had held so many years of resentment seemed smaller now, almost fragile. Driving back to Seattle, I rolled down the window. The wind was cold, sharp, and clean. I thought of all the things I'd finally made room for: my own savings, my own peace, my own future. In the weeks that followed, I focused on work, took a promotion, and signed up for a night course I'd been putting off. My life was no longer divided into what they needed and what was left of me. It was mine again. Sometimes I still think about that night, the laughter, the silence, the line I finally drew. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice, that being the good daughter